Good evening. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Equity and Diversity Committee. We'll get started by calling the meeting to order. And if you would please join me in saying the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so first, as usual, we need to approve the minutes from last month's meeting. I believe the minutes are linked in the agenda if you haven't had a chance to check them out. And I'll give people a chance to say any comments or questions that you might have before I ask for a motion to approve. So does anyone have anything that looks like they'd like changed or added? All right, can we get a motion to approve the minutes? Mirzad, and a second? Amy. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so you'll notice that the agenda looks a little bit different than it did last month. And as we continue to make changes to the format of these meetings and adjust to figure out what works best, we've decided that the public portion, the public comments, will become a part of the regular Board of Ed meeting. So public comments from the community and from stakeholders are, as always, encouraged and welcomed. But mainly in the interest of time, they'll be read like they were last night in the regular Board of Ed meeting public portion. So just moving forward, we have first on the agenda tonight a presentation from our research subcommittee on the work that they've been doing and the information that they've been gathering about surrounding districts and where everyone else is kind of in this work to follow up from the information that's been shared from our student clubs and the data that Dr. Weil shared to continue establishing sort of like a foundation of where our community on the micro and the macro level are in this work. So I'll hand it over to the presenter from, I believe, Mirzad, are you presenting?
Yeah, I'll take care of that right now.
So you can go ahead and share your screen and I will mute and the floor is yours.
Can everyone see this? Great. Okay. So as a member of the research subcommittee, since our last meeting, we've been working on doing research regarding neighboring areas and school districts and what their EDI initiatives have been so far, as well as, where the progress stands. So here is our concise report of that. So the first school district that we have information from is the Baldwinsville Central School District. So Leah, if you want to tell us more about that, that would be great.
Great, can you guys hear me? Great. So I picked the Central New York region to look at and landed on Baldwinsville as a somewhat similar makeup district to ours. So there are some stats just to give you a sense of the district. They formed their diversity committee in 2019 with the goals to implement revised curriculum and offering special presentations for students, staff, and community members. The committee is, I think, a little bit bigger than ours, but a community, staff, student-based committee. And they spent the first, I think, 3 months worth of meetings workshopping with a DE&I consultant around the work. Very similar work to what we've done, setting definitions, setting some goals. And then, Mirzad, if you want to go to the next slide. Our goal kind of in our research was to see what type of programs different districts have put together or utilized an already standing program. So I had a call with their diversity committee chair, and the things they have worked on were implementing the Positivity Project. I think my understanding was that was geared kind of towards the younger schools and to help children build positive relationships and restorative practices with morning meetings. Then culturally responsive teaching is a model they've been trying to implement at the school. The first step of that was to do a book study among the secondary teachers, voluntary, around a book called Not Light But Fire, How to Lead Meaningful Race Conversations in the Classrooms. So that was a continuing, I think it was continuing ed credit as well. I'm not sure. And then they've really utilized their website, and that was something in which they were able to get a lot of community and volunteer effort, and also address some ways to kind of reach beyond one particular topic or niche if people wanted to find information on other issues around diversity, race, LGBTQ, disability. That was kind of a platform where their focus could be a little bit broader and people could submit materials such as TED Talks. There was a microaggression training that was created by the Junior League, and resources on unconscious bias. To be honest, she said, things stalled a little bit with COVID. The committee is still doing its work, but obviously it was an unusual year for the district. And one thing she pointed out to me was, after doing a lot of work together as a community of a committee, the real work kind of got started in supporting individual schools. So right now they're really seen as a resource that an individual school may come to and say, we want to put on a program. Can you help us find some resources for it and help us get some facilitators and things? So it's really a more school-based program. And a lot of it was also partnering with just people they knew, who knew someone at Syracuse University, who knew somebody at Lemoyne, and kind of working to build some bridges for various programming. So I would say it's a pretty programming-based committee, and then also information sharing on the website.
That takes us into our next school district, which is the Newton Public Schools. Ben, if you wanted to lead us on that one, that would be great.
Everyone hear me? Okay, great. So I chose the Newton Public School District. I looked at Massachusetts as my region because, early in the conversation with the board around the issue of equity in Gilliland, we looked to the Needham School District in Massachusetts, where one of our administrators works now, one of our former administrators. And I didn't want to look at Needham, even though it has a tremendous amount of resources and initiatives and programs that it's working on, and all online, because I figured probably a lot of us are looking at Needham in our own subgroups for different aspects. But I decided to look around at neighboring districts in Massachusetts, and the reason I picked Newton is because its motto is equity and excellence. And if you dig a little deeper, they formed their first equity committee in 1987. So they've been doing this work for a long time, or at least thinking about this work for a long time. Newton Public Schools, the district is about 2.5 times the size of Gilliland. They're a little bit more diverse in terms of race. But Gilliland would have more English language learners and students, economically disadvantaged students. So it's a little bit different than us. And Mirzad, if you could forward to the next slide. So when I was looking at schools, I wanted to focus on things that I wasn't seeing from other places. Like I said, Needham has a whole bunch of programs. A lot of schools have an equity committee, an equity policy, a diversity coordinator. But I was looking for programs and policies that stood out. And what Newton had that I didn't see anywhere else was a equity policy that pertained to PTA spending. And Newton has 12 elementary schools. As you saw on the next slide, some of the households there are quite affluent. And so since 2003, they've had this equity policy in place.
Step back when you hit the rubber thing.
I'm sorry, what?
Gloria, I think your mic is unmuted.
Okay, let me just check.
Okay, so they have caps on what can be spent per student, and it's a dollar amount, and it exists only at the elementary level. But the goal is to ensure that students at these different elementary schools have substantially the same experience as each other, regardless of which elementary school, which reflects Newton's overall, philosophy regarding equitable distribution of resources and access to curriculum. You'll see that they break it into three categories: the core curriculum, which is, textbooks, professional development, staffing, things like that. And then there's the caps on curriculum-related materials like music supplies or field trips or playground maintenance. And then there's no caps for other items like teacher appreciation or things like that. Next slide. And then the other thing that stood out to me about the Newton School District is their Black, Indigenous, Person of Color staff affinity groups. And what they do, what it is that at each building level, BIPOC individuals can get together every other month or so to discuss and support each other. What was interesting about this to me is that a lot of times you can hire somebody and then they leave because they're not supported here or comfortable here. And this is a way to increase retention among new staff members who would be in the minority, especially here in Gilliland. Newton has about 12% of its staff that are persons of color. So I think in Gilliland, this model would be premature, but it's an interesting idea, and it's definitely something to think about. We can create a hiring process, right, a recruitment process that attracts more people of color, but Gilliland ultimately needs to be a district that people of color want to work in, right, and not just because of the literature that we send them to get them to apply, but because once they get here, they feel that they have a network and a community that supports them. So this is an interesting thing that Newton has been doing.
Great, thanks. Our third district, which we covered, was the Bethlehem Central School District. Lewis, if you wanted to run us over that.
Okay, can you hear me? Oh, good. So we talked about this maybe a few weeks ago. We had a meeting with the Bethlehem's superintendent talking about their activities in the past year. So and the other year before the past year was the most activity happening because COVID, they kind of get their plan restricted. What they focus their goals. They focus on these 4 goals. It's kind of pretty general, academic, character, wellness, and community. Maybe, do you have a next slide? Yes. So what they are focusing now is to kind of audit and restructure their curriculum materials. What they have done is they have a group of teachers and parents audit the library materials and teaching materials and make sure that the students have enough exposure to the material that include this equity, diversity, and inclusion. I think we want to do that in future for this. I think the literature, curriculum purpose. Next slide. Community focus activities. this is too much words, but essentially they have built a couple of programs that try to help the minorities, and they have some certain programs to help the slow students in the minority group. That's what they have done here. Next slide. Okay, on to the school district I've done for the Westchester County. This one, Scarsdale, is, I guess, probably one of the best among New York. I try to see what they have done in equity, diversity, and inclusion. Looking at their data, looks like they have very high percentage of Asian students. You can see it's around 14%. And actually through the years, they have very high population in the district. So they naturally have a lot of student groups that focus on the Asian culture and this history, music study. They have yearly education report on diversity, equity, and inclusion from the superintendent office. Actually, this is a video there that everybody can see. So last for 1 hour and a half. It's a report from the deputy superintendent every year. As you can see, they have all kinds of student clubs that relate to the word culture and culture exchange. Next slide. Okay, Niskayuna is also a neighboring. They have established a similar council like starting 2016, and the subcommittee is included diversity, mental health, and wellness. Next slide. These are their kind of two programs, major programs. One is the Generation Ready Equity Institute that included 16 teachers and 2 from each school. That's their team of the teacher in the respect equity. And on the student side, they have this No Place for Hate program. And we have similar program in high school, or like this. They have this since 2016. Next one. Oh, that's all for this.
Thank you, everybody. I believe now would be the time where we field any questions, comments, or concerns. Yep, Andy?
Yeah, hey guys, this is great. Is there any information, whether it's statistical or anecdotal, on how well any of these programs are working?
So I was faced with that question earlier, and as of this moment, since many of these projects are so new, there's no immediate results. I would say that just doing something in general would prove to be, more beneficial than doing nothing, but it's really too early to tell. It's definitely probably going to take another year or two.
I
to actually see
remember
results.
when we had the meeting with the Bethlehem superintendent, she mentioned that the incident of the students who violate the kind of the school policy code for the diversity, that instance drops quite a lot. One thing I think is very, very helpful is that all schools have some school policy and student conduct codes related to the respect I don't know that we have any, haven't looked into that. They have specific, like, you can't, you know, speak really very racist kind of expression, like certain kind, if you do this, there's suspension for a few days. That's written very clear on their school policy. We want to look to, we want to implement any of this sort. But we mentioned that after these programs, that's for as far as for Bethlehem, I remember the incident of student violation of these policies actually drops quite a lot.
So would that mean
In the
reductions in incidents that would be covered by like the Dignity Act for all students?
That's what it sounds like. If,
Okay.
see,
Okay.
is that what you were saying, Lois?
It was code of conduct violations at Bethlehem. Students of color were at 6 times the rate of white students being disciplined prior to some of their programs, and now that line is back down with everyone else. So it wasn't DASA incidents. It was more of discipline of students.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just to connect what Seema was saying in the chat about using some kind of like outside consultant or some kind of program, it seems like the districts that you guys researched implemented some kind of program or had someone, a DEI like consultant come in to help guide kind of like the things that were being implemented, which sounds a little bit like maybe work that the DEI coordinator that we're hiring for might spearhead and, you know, drive the bus a little bit on. But I just thought that that was something that stood out to me, that we haven't quite gotten to that point of, you know, bringing someone in. Does anyone have any other questions or comments for the research subcommittee? Thank you for this thorough job that you guys did coming up with all this information and the work that you put in.
I have a comment. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Which is, yeah, when Ben mentioned, you know, the Newton, Mass has, I think it was Newton, Mass, right? That has the building-wide meetings for staff people who are persons of color. That was interesting. Then he went on to say, yeah, well, they have whatever percent, what 12% of its staff are persons of color. So that's amazing. I mean, in our school district, we might have one person in a building if we're lucky. In some buildings, we have no people. So, you know, it's, Ben said that, you know, this model wouldn't necessarily work for us, but that's an understatement. It absolutely wouldn't work for us right now. And that goes back to what Barb was asking the other day at the Board of Education meeting about, well, why is the diversity coordinator, equity coordinator, why is that person involved in hiring? And the reason why that person needs to be involved in some way in hiring, whether it's advising or sitting in on all the interviews or helping write all the job postings or whatever it might be, is because of this problem. So clearly we have to, you know, raise this level of, you know, address this problem of not having teachers and faculty who are people of color. So just wanted to mention that.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you very much to the research subcommittee. That was really good initial work. And I, you know, just listening and reading the things on the slides, it sounds like there would be a lot of crossover in all of the research that you did throughout our other subcommittees. So yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so if we're ready to wrap that up, we can move on to reports from our subcommittee reports. So let's see. Does the research committee actually, before we start on that, have anything else that they want to report on, or was that the bulk of obviously like what you've been? Okay, I see people shaking their heads. So does the internal equity audit, would you like to go ahead and report out on what you guys have been working on in your subcommittee?
Sure, I'm not sure if my mic is working. Can you hear me, Nidra? Okay. All right, just had to switch mics. So we had a meeting in between the last meeting and this one where we had some of our volunteers join us who are doing some work with us. Basically what we're doing right now is we're looking at sample audits and also sample audit templates. So some research documents, some articles and other documents put together about how to create an equity audit that include, different categories and purposes. And what we did in our last meeting was we took all of the research that we did looking at the sample equity audits and organized which ones, which formats we liked, which categories we liked best. So, we took a look at categories like student achievement, like staff and curriculum, and talk through those different ones. So we're going to keep doing that piece of the work. Excited for the DEI coordinator because I think that person is going to play a really important role in the audit work because, again, it's a pretty heavy lift and needs a lot of coordination. One of our next steps is really to determine what are the pieces that we're going to do ourselves as a district and what are the pieces that we might need some extra help with. In addition to what pieces are going to be the quantitative data that we might already have on hand that we can use, our staff that we have to help us, mine for that data, and what pieces are going to be a little more qualitative, surveys, focus groups, interviews, conversations, and the like. So we're digging into all those samples and templates, and it's going to be a lot of work ahead of us, but I think we're chugging along. If anybody else from the committee has anything else, feel free to jump in.
One of the things that we discussed in the subcommittee that we have to probably make one of our next key priorities is what are the research questions we're attempting to answer by conducting the equity audit. That was one of our biggest kind of starting blocks we identified.
Does anyone have any questions or feedback for the subcommittee? All right. So would, I think, Elizabeth, are you reporting out for our engagement subcommittee?
Yeah, present about that. Okay, so we met on May 12th. We talked about the initiative from the New York State Regents, which we thought was great. The idea of the danger of a single story, we thought was really wonderful way to look at it as, this would only add more stories. I think the Regents used the word rich tapestry of the American experience or something. So it makes clear that this isn't about taking away anything, but it's about adding so that more people's voices can be heard, more people's perspectives can be included. And, we can have students and teachers work out, how they think these voices go together, what the conclusions might be. We talked about the definitions that our committee is creating for diversity, equity, and inclusion. There was some talk about the word co-creation, which was an interesting word. Maybe some people thought clunky, I'm not sure, but mostly it seemed active, a very active word. So we liked it for the most part. And some people thought maybe collaboration would be better. But then we talked about like whether the other words, I think it was openness and fairness, was it? Is that it? Was that the other ones? Openness and fairness and co-creation. We were wondering if the other two words might better be a little bit more active words, like co-creation seems to be. In comparison, openness and fairness seemed a little bit, passive. So we like the idea of co-creating. Anyway, then we talked about our subcommittee and how to get started and whether we should divide into little subcommittees where some people work on engagement, some people work on curriculum, and some people work, what was the other one, Nidra?
Professional development
Oh,
is
yeah.
our weird little branch.
Right, right. Or whether we should sort of all tackle something together at first. And it seemed like we were gonna break up into smaller groups and have additional meetings to work on those areas. So we agreed that professional development was the most important thing because having teacher buy-in is essential. Let's see, we also talked about having a questionnaire for recent graduates that would ask them about some of the things that they wish they had learned at Guilderland. I guess this would be a way of sort of beginning to think about the curriculum, but it could take the form of a Google Doc and things that you didn't learn but wish you had at Guilderland. And Sandra also suggested joining forces with another nearby district, maybe a more urban district like Albany. And we talked about having the Black Student Union and the Anti-Racism Committee come and talk to us, which I think we're going to do before the end of the school year. We're hoping to. And we talked about having them also see if we could have them fill out a Google Doc that would talk about the goals of their organization and things that they've accomplished and things like that. And make it, each person could fill it out anonymously so they could talk freely about their experiences. And then maybe have representatives of the groups come and talk to us. And Barbara had made some suggestions in the meeting about maybe somehow expanding Tippecai's presentation so that it could be given to the larger community. So she was saying maybe it could be taped, on the Guilderland YouTube stream or something so that more people could see it, although that might be hard to still have it be interactive if it was on television. She also suggested maybe having the librarians in the different schools who have already been doing a lot of work with increasing the diversity of their holdings. She suggested having them do a taped presentation on the YouTube site somehow and talking about the kinds of books they've added to the collections. And then we talked about whether we wanted to break over the summer or keep going. And I think we decided we wanted to keep going. And we just got a list from Tippecai of the community members who are interested in working with us, and we're excited about that. There are 7 people.
Does anyone have any feedback or questions? Oh, go ahead, Barb.
I just wanted to put in a plug for, allowing people to join the various subcommittees. I know Amy has mentioned that they could be helpers, but I think we can easily accommodate, like we had 2 people join us the last time. And to me, the more voices that hear and interact, the better. And I'm just a little bit concerned that we as an engagement committee, more the merrier because the more voices that you hear. But I know Amy and a few others have mentioned that, well, we can have helpers, but they aren't really invited to the meetings unless they're presenting on something that they've helped with. And I'm just wondering if we could share, why we as a larger group of 20 people wouldn't sort of fulfill our promise that we had said to the people who didn't make this group of 20, that as the subcommittees were formed, we would welcome their involvement. And I just see it as a very positive development for the community. As I said, the more voices that you hear, the more you learn and the more the message spreads. So if anybody, would want to comment on that, as I said, I would lobby heavily for people being part of the subcommittees and being able to attend the subcommittee meetings, even if they're not presenting something that they've helped with, if they're interested. Obviously, you can't have 40 or 50 people, attending, but I think, a reasonable limit of here we have 20 and we can hear each other, we can see each other, and we can dialogue. I just see that it would be a helpful development.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on something important at the end there, Barb, that the point of us splitting up into smaller subcommittees was to kind of, create smaller groups that were a little bit more manageable. But I think, Amy, did you want to respond?
Yeah, sure. I'm thrilled that our subcommittee as well has a number of volunteers to help out, and it's really important. And I totally agree with you. The more, the merrier. I think the distinction between being a member of the committee versus being somebody who helps with the committee is that process-wise, this is a board-appointed committee, and so the members of this committee are appointed by the board. Therefore, in order for additional members to be members of the committee, they'd have to be appointed by the board and go through that process. And when the board enacted the committee, you came up with a certain size, and there was a process by which people applied and were chosen as members and appointed at a board meeting. And so, but anybody who has reached out to me to be a part of the committee and to help with the work, they are helping with the work just like the subcommittee members are, and attending the subcommittee meetings. We had, I don't remember, Joe, do you remember how many we had? Maybe 4 or 5 people, right, Dee, at our last subcommittee meeting. But yeah, I agree, the more the merrier. It's more of a process. And if we look at ourselves as a subcommittee of the board, just like policy, just like, business practices and communications, how people are officially appointed to be members of those committee, we would have to use that same protocol.
Yeah, 5
So
to 6.
it wasn't to not hear people's voices. Go ahead, Joe, sorry.
5 to 6 additional folks joined us.
Thanks, Amy. Barb, is that a new hand?
It's a new hand. Just from the standpoint of a process question, yes, this committee and the subcommittees that form from this are board appointed, because we then differentiated into the various 4 committees. But then the people that want to join are sort of a subcommittee of a subcommittee. And I didn't think that they would need board approval. But as I said, I just wanted to throw that idea out there because, as I said, I'm glad to hear that, these people have been able to attend your meetings as well and feel part of it. So if it's just a fine tuning of a definition of helper versus member, then I'm fine with that, as long as they have access to attend the meetings and, to participate, then that's fine. As I said, saw it as a subcommittee of a subcommittee that didn't need to be appointed, but I'm content with allowing, as long as people are allowed to come to the meetings and hear each other and share their thoughts, then that's fine. Thanks.
Yeah, it sounds like essentially we're on the same page with that. People are able to come to the subcommittee and have their voice heard and participate in the meetings as the subcommittee sees appropriate and needs people to do so, wants people to do so. Okay, so if no one has any other comments or questions or feedback for the engagement subcommittee, communications, you guys are last. So whoever.
Okay. Maxine said she might be late, but I see that she's on, and she had asked me to make the report.
You can go ahead. You can go ahead, Mr. Genovese.
You sure? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, if you want to add anything, no, add it, okay? So we had a meeting and we talked in the beginning about the whole new members kind of idea, and we definitely would like some new members. Once we really define our work and we get the definitions settled and we figure out what we need. We did finish our recommendations for the definitions based upon all the input that we got from Ben, from Tibisay, and from Kelly. And I guess we'll talk about those later. The other thing that we talked about is maybe a possible region-wide EDI committee would be helpful so that we could avoid pushbacks and misperceptions and all that kind of stuff, and we could stand together and do it correctly. So that's something to explore. In terms of the SED document, pages 2 to 5, there were 3 things that really stood out. This notion of root causes, this problem of having a single story, and this whole notion of the systemic aspect of what we're trying to address. The issue with the root causes, is that racism and bigotry are not root causes. Other things cause them. You know, if you look at psychology and spirituality and sociology, right, they say there are root causes beneath them that drive all of that. And as example, three that come up all the time is greed, fear, and ignorance. So if we just go after one piece of the problems that is causing the symptoms, okay, which are racism and bigotry, what happens is they move around. So if you solve anti-Semitism, okay, and if people are still fearful or ignorant or greedy or whatever, that just moves over to something else. So we have to really explore root causes and to try to get at the root causes. The questions we have to really look at is what makes people do these things, okay? What's the deeper cause? And one of the ways to look at that, and out where I worked, we used what's called the Toyota 5 Whys. And that is whenever you get an answer to a question, you ask why 5 times to drive down to find out what's really going on there. So that might be helpful to get and address the root causes. And each of the different kinds of programs that we have, you know, the social emotional learning programs, the high school groups, there's class projects, they are all dealing with these problems in the same way. But if we can all get together and focus on the root causes, we can really make a pretty heavy impact on this. One of the other things that we were worried about is when people don't get a lot of information, all kinds of nonsense fills the vacuum. So we're worried about people thinking we're going to make every child feel guilty for being white before we come up with solutions and realize the problems. There's all kinds of stuff out there, the New York Times, everywhere. You know, there's stories about what's happening all across the country, and we need to get out there and say what we're doing and what we're not doing. There's been a confluence of events on all this between the COVID-19, the spike in anti-Asian hate, the spike in anti-Semitism. So there's all of these different pieces, and they all come from the same place. And we have to figure out what that is. Regarding the single story, this goes right down to the classrooms where we need to make sure that students can learn from multiple perspectives. Right? And not just, you know, the one story that they know or that they hear from other people. With respect to systems and systemic problems, the system definitely needs to be changed because people operate based upon what the system is telling them. But the system really is the sum of all the habits of the people. Right? They have these habits, and we have to address both the habits of individuals and the support that the system is giving for those habits we want to change, and the support we can get the system to give to the habits we want to seed and grow. And the other issue is this sort of problem of anecdotal data, because a lot of people don't want to come forward and tell us the things that are happening to us until the rally. And we heard it at the rally really well about what's going on out there. And that's the kind of information we got to get out there. And that was only, how many, Maxine? 5, 7 people told their stories?
Yeah, we had about 7 speakers, and then we had the student presentations.
Right. You know, so that's 5 or 7. Okay. There's got to be lots more stories out there that we have to get out to show people while we're doing what we're doing. So the next steps relate exactly to that. We need community members to do articles, artwork, videos, reflecting on the definitions that we come up with and what they mean to them and how they're going to manifest them and operationalize them to truly personalize our mission. We need folks to report on microaggressions and the things they don't realize they've experienced or done. People may not realize, you know, how they've been hurt in all of this, and it just builds and it builds and it builds, and they're blaming it on other things. So we really need to have people understanding all of that. We got to make sure that overt acts of racism get reported and disciplined. Okay, we need data points on this. The examples of microaggressions and the things that go unreported are what we need to get out there and share. We need to give examples, though, not just of the microaggressions, but how folks have overcome those and how we're going to help them overcome those microaggressions. And the last big thing is we need to get students involved with video editing and sharing their videos. As an example, the anti-hate rally. And there are some videos that have been done by Mr. Pinchinot, which are called Before You Decide. And this gets back to these habits where people are aware of what they're about to do. So before they decide to do something, they need to do something, you know, whether it's relax and take a pause, whether it's reflect upon what they're going to do, maybe it's choosing a better way. And there's an example of some of these videos that we'll have to share with everyone. There's a long URL on that, but we'll make sure everybody gets the link on that. Maxine, anything else?
No, you did a great job. Thank you. Another thing that we have to work on too is in order for more students to come forward about their experiences, we also need to change the culture and environment surrounding like microaggressions and instances of racism. I'm going to quote one of the wonderful student leaders who spoke there, Jessica Arian-Bua, I believe she's the vice president of Black Student Union. Microaggressions are cumulative and every unintended racist comment feels like a stinging paper cut. They are small, but over time, if you get enough unhealed paper cuts, you might find yourself bleeding all over the place. So I think that's really representative of how these instances that seem small can get really big and they can end up creating a bigger impact than we believe they do.
Andy, you mentioned something that we talked about quite extensively in our subcommittee meeting, which was like just addressing some of the public comments and things that have been said surrounding kind of like DEI myths and just kind of the understanding that we've gotten from hearing some of those things that there is a misunderstanding of what DEI means. And so we talked about as part of our engagement little, you know, subgroup of our subgroup that we would like to put something together, start collecting materials, researching maybe what other districts are doing to communicate very clearly with the community and all of the stakeholders about what DEI is, you know, in essence, disregarding any kind of, you know, like political or anything that's out there socially that's circulating to clarify. So I think that would be a really interesting thing for maybe our two subcommittees to at least communicate on, you know, with our engagement part, and then how communicating it would actually play out.
Yeah, one of the things we have planned for the website is a what are we going to do or what are we doing section, okay? And I suggested that maybe we need to have what are we not going to do section, okay? You know, which would deal with that. They're very straight up also when people say, oh, you guys are da 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 da, you can say, well, look at the website. We just said we're not gonna, so we set the boundaries and we know what it is. So yeah, I think that's real important to get out there, because as I said, you know, if there's a vacuum, all kinds of nonsense, you know, happens. People make up stuff, they think stuff, and it's a problem.
Yeah, Ben, I see your hand. You can go ahead. And then Mike, I see your hand also.
Yeah, I just want to echo Andy's point. The Newton Public Schools that I presented on today, they have a bit of controversy over how they teach Israeli-Palestinian relations, and they have a whole page on their website kind of explaining, you know, this is why we're doing it this way. These are the sources that we're using, their primary sources. What we're not doing is trying to indoctrinate students or teach any political thing. We're trying to, you know, share primary resources and enhance critical thinking on this subject. And so I can send that link to that subcommittee, and you guys can take a look at it and maybe use it as a model.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I think what we talked about was those proactive approaches. So Ben, we would appreciate, you know, seeing some samples of how we could get those parameters out there to dispel some of those myths that we already know exist. And the other thing we also talked about was capitalizing on the student voice piece of this and having the student voice drive this conversation. If the students can tell their stories without the adults getting in the way, I think we'll be able to, to not only mobilize students, but also be able to, you know, tell an authentic, meaningful, you know, story that impacts the kids that we're really serving for, right? So, I don't know, that's the other piece of the conversation that we had that I just wanted to stress.
I put my hand up so I didn't jump the line, so I'm going to put that down. But I also just seeing some of the work that the research committee did, and then after having that presentation shared, I went and did a little bit of my own research, and it seems like other districts have adopted culturally responsive teaching frameworks, or some places I think call it their, equity framework, that I think could also lend itself nicely to clarifying really like what it is that we're doing, like on a foundational level, to eliminate any kind of confusion about what it is that all of this is based in. So that might be something that maybe like a larger committee, I don't know what subcommittee that would fall under, or maybe it's a project for the large committee to pull together to work on, but that seems like something that other places are doing that makes it very clear on their website what they mean when they say, DEI, or when they reference their equity plan. Elizabeth, I see your hand is up.
Okay, sorry, this isn't about this topic right now. This is going back to the presentations before about the school districts. I remember being impressed reading in one of the school districts information that they allow any students who want to take on the rigors of an AP course to go ahead and take the course. I thought that was really interesting. That speaks to the complaint that we've had repeatedly from one parent. I wonder, is that something that we could consider? Maybe it's not a good thing to talk about right now in this particular meeting, but I wonder if that's something that we would be able to do at Guilderland.
I don't think I'm the person to answer that question, but I know someone definitely wrote it down and this is recorded. So we have record of that. I see, Barb, your hand is up.
One of the questions that we've been asked many, many times, not just about the AP courses, but about the honors courses, and how we limit the number of kids that want to challenge themselves, to take the honors course. So it may be a hand-in-hand type situation here, as we look at the total curriculum. Do we want to make it available to anybody who wants to try, or are we hamstrung by numbers of teachers and things such as that? But it certainly is something, that's worthy of exploration.
All right, does anyone else have anything that they would like to add or ask? All right, well, that brings us to our discussion about the definitions as they stand currently. I believe that's the next thing on our agenda. So I'm not sure if someone from the communications subcommittee wants to present the definitions like we did before, so that we can all look at them and see what changes were made after suggestions were sent to that subcommittee. I think that would be helpful. I don't think, the current updated definition.
They were attached to the packet.
Okay, let's see.
Andy, is that the most updated one?
Well, yes, plus one more thing, okay? So,
Yep.
Just to give you a perspective, so we had the ones that we sent out that you all saw maybe a week or so ago, plus they're the same ones. That was a document that Mike did up, okay? After the rally, okay, the students had a bunch of signs up, okay? And they had words up there, and they had kindness and respect and tolerance, right? So one of the things we thought was maybe we should revisit at least kindness and respect as words for inclusion, if people are interested, solely because these were the words that the students were using, and, lots of times and all of that. So I did update those, and we can paste them into the chat or share them with everybody if there's any interest in doing that. Okay, but the ones that we put out there were equity, fairness, diversity, openness, and inclusion, and co-creation. Those were the ones that we did it. And to use kindness or respect, there's just a minor change in the definition. And one way to make sure we had co-creation and collaboration in there was to put them in the third paragraph, which is the SED definition. But that's only if people want to consider that.
Go ahead, Barb.
I certainly would like to hear what you'd have to say, because as Elizabeth pointed out, one of my concerns with the word co-create, and it just didn't seem to relate to kids that I know. And I'm glad to hear that they did use the words that we were originally talking about: kindness, respect. And so, you know, I'd love to hear, you know, possible other breakdowns on the definition of inclusion.
Okay, I pasted as much as I could into the chat, but if you want to read those, I'll read them at the end. Okay, so let me walk you through what we've got so far. And these are essentially what we had the last time, but Kelly and I had a long email conversation. Tibisay gave me stuff, and the definition of inclusion is pretty much mostly her stuff, right? So what we're looking at, okay, in the first set that you've got,
Hey, Andy?
Yeah.
Andy,
what?
do you want me
Yeah.
to share my screen so that they can see what we talked about?
That would be
Sure,
helpful.
yep.
I'm trying to find
Great.
it. I can't
All right,
find the.
hold on.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm working off of a phone because my wife's got the computer and she's working tonight, so I can't do all the multi-processing stuff. All right. So, equity equals fairness. And to address the concern about having active words, I'm a big fan of active words and everything too. And I racked my brains to try to find active words that would work for equity and diversity, and I couldn't. However, what we could do is, instead of saying fairness, we could say be fair. Instead of openness, we could say be open. All right, so that's a possibility. If other folks have better ideas for words, I racked my brains on this to come out with words that worked, and I couldn't. Any event, what we've got for equity is different from equality. Equality means giving everyone the same things. Equity means being fair to each and every person by considering their specific needs and giving each individual what they need to achieve their own goals. So we just clarified to make sure it's each and every person, okay, to personalize it some more and not just everyone, and to make sure that it's focused on their specific needs and not some general ideas, and then making sure that we give individual what they need to achieve their goals, not some other goals, you know, that the system, you know, other than the academic types, you know, kind of goals that they need. The next sentence on that is almost verbatim from SED. This includes providing access, opportunity, and advancement for all by striving to identify and eliminate barriers that prevent the full participation of individuals from all groups.
So do we want to just take like our first definition here and open it up for comments and
Yes.
suggestions, just to organize, make sure everyone has a chance to give their input? So this first definition of equity that's being presented, does anyone have any comments on that or changes that? Go ahead, Elizabeth.
I like this for the most part. I just want to be sure to in these definitions to try not to assume that these are being written from the point of view of, for instance, white straight people or something like that. So we don't want to be saying, okay, we're going to give all of you other people something, or we're going to share, assuming that there is this default setting, which is white people who are, you know, straight, who are, you know, all that stuff. So we don't want to assume that position, because that's not being open and diverse and fair. So the only thing I wonder about is, maybe it's too wordy. Should we change the word giving? So instead of saying giving each person what they need, we could say making sure each person has what they need. It's a small change, but it doesn't make it sound like we're just condescendingly giving people something. I have a similar comment in another one of the sections, but anyway, whatever anybody thinks.
Yeah. We've talked about that before, the power dynamics in languages, in the language that we use, and a lot of this work, making sure that it really embodies like what we're trying to to do here. I'm just looking at hands. It looks like, Ben, you have a hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to agree with Elizabeth's point. Some of the language that we changed that got changed there about making it more individualized and considering their goals instead of just the word success, because success often comes with some of those generic white male connotations. So, you know, if we could find a different word for giving, you know, I think that I'd be in favor of that. I think that I defined it in my conversation with Andy about, I used the word allocate resources in a manner that allows each individual. I mean, the issue becomes that, like, we're talking about a specific organization, right? Gillen Central School District has 503 teachers and, you know, $105 million budget. And so, you know, at some level, language or no, it is a system apportioning resources. So, you know, as a reminder for, you know, as a reminder to the teacher, to the administrators, to the board, the community, about what we're giving to students. I don't know that the word is the wrong word, but I would agree that, you know, a word like allocating or you know, something more neutral would be helpful.
All right, does anyone else have anything else to comment? I'm trying to keep track of hands. It's difficult in the presentation mode, but I don't think I see anyone. Oh, Andy, did you want to?
Yep. I think Elizabeth's idea is good. How about we say equity means being fair to each and every person by considering their specific needs and making sure each individual gets what they need to achieve their own goals.
I think I see head nods. I see thumbs up. I think that sounds like a very, really responsive change. I like that also. Okay, so on this first definition, if no one has any more comments, we can move on to. Oh,
my question is in terms of the active word. Do we want to do fairness or do we want to do be fair? So we want to change it to make it more active. That's my question. You know, I mean, fairness and openness are all over the place, you know, in DEI work, you know?
I think we can't really solve that until we solve what we're going to do with co-create or whatever, because they got to sort of go together. And we can't say be co-create. So
No. Well, I played with that. So, you know, so the T-shirt says, be fair, be open, co-create.
Oh.
So they add up to the action, right? So that's how I saw this. That's the T-shirt and the poster and the logo and whatever else you want. That was my idea for that. I mean, I spent hours trying to come up with a better way of doing it. And then I hit that and I said, that works. But that's a question for everybody. You know, this is just me brainstorming, you know.
and we do appreciate, Andy, all of the work that you're putting into us. It really is very spectacular. I personally like the more active language and be fair and be open. I don't know what others are thinking.
Me too.
Okay. All right. So what about our revised definition for diversity?
Now, that wasn't changed at all because no one had any comments on that. So that's exactly what everyone saw the last time.
So our final definition for inclusion is where we had a lot of.
I have a comment about diversity. So in number 2, inviting them to fully participate. Does that sound as though we are, again, assuming a default position of people who are already on the inside, already in the thick of it, already in charge of things, and now we're inviting these other people who are from various races, sexual orientations, abilities, we're inviting them to participate in something that we've already set up. And now I keep thinking about the picture that Mike Laster put up before and I think it was a picture and it went with a phrase about, like, you know, was it inclusion means that everybody gets a chance to pick the music, so there's a dance going on and all these groups get a chance to select the music that we're going to dance to. So I wonder about the word inviting, because I feel like that goes with that power dynamic of we're on the inside, we're inviting these other people to join us. And I'm not sure about that.
Why don't we do the same thing we did up in Equity and submit and making sure they fully participate in all aspects of school life?
I think even the word they, I think Amy just put that in the chat. That really resonated with me. And so I'm wondering if we could just say participating together in all aspects of school life and just leave it at that, so that it's kind of just like goes along with that co-creation, that it's like from the beginning all together, that we're doing it, as one, and there's no one person that's initiating or inviting or welcoming someone else in.
Or Tibisai.
Okay, so
Tibisai,
what's your suggestion?
But Tibisai just wrote in the chat a very concise possibility, which is inviting everyone to fully participate. And that's good, because then it's not,
okay,
as Amy said, it's not them, we're not othering them. So if we said inviting everyone, that's concise, maybe that solves the problem.
I can agree with that. All right, let me check for hands. It looks like no one has a hand. Got some consensus in the chat. That's great. Okay. So moving on to our definition for inclusion equals co-creation. I think this is where a lot of people had comments and maybe feedback that they had sent to Annie.
Okay, let me read it. Okay, so inclusion means to co-create by using the interests and views of all our students, families, and employees to make decisions that uncover and repair historical inequities and set all students up for success. If we want to go as an example with kindness or be kind, we would just make it inclusion means being kind to all of our students, families, employees, same stuff at the end. If we want to make it respect, it means inclusion means respecting all our students, same thing. The second paragraph is almost exactly what the SED once again is doing. If we want to go with something other than co-creation, what we could do is put in the second paragraph, this includes, let me get, where is it? Okay, so instead of saying this includes authentically bringing those traditionally excluded individuals and groups into processes, activities, and decisions / policy making in ways that share power and ensure equal access to opportunities and resources, we could say this includes authentically bringing traditionally excluded individuals and groups into collaborative, co-creative processes, ... Okay, that's the alternatives. I mean, I'm biased towards kindness. You've all seen my email address, but that is not here or there. I'm willing to go with what folks think. One of the positive things that I sent an email to Tibisai about co-creation is that's something you could use pedagogically, on how we're co-creating a project, co-creating something. So there's ways of doing that, and it works with be fair, be open, co-create, because the co-create is the end product, of recognizing being fair, recognizing being open, and now we're going to roll, okay, and we're going to make something new and wonderful. But that's open to the discussion. The reason why we rethought about kindness and respect was because those were words that we saw at the rally. So, maybe Maxine and Mirzad can chime in here about what they think, because, are these words you guys can use? Is this the way kids are going to think? What do you think?
Maxine, your hand was first, so you can go ahead, and then Barb.
I really think that we should stay away from co-creation. If people want my reasoning, I'll give it, but I think that using a word more like collaboration or like respect would be more appropriate. Okay, I'm just gonna have a full disclosure moment here. When I see co-creation, I immediately think of sexual. And if this is gonna be something that's read by high schoolers, I know I'm not gonna be the only one. And I really don't want our work to be just like, that's the first thing you think of.
Thanks, Maxine. All right, Barb?
I think the youngsters at the high school and, have really spoken and have used the words respect or kindness. So I would be happy with either one. I am leaning towards kindness because, again, be fair, be open, be kind. I can see posters at the middle school, throughout the school. They're easily understood by students. And I think they're very, very positive words. So as I said, I definitely want to change the collaborate, but I would be open mostly to kindness, but also I can use respect because, again, the students themselves chose those words for their rally.
Tibisat, your hand is next.
So I think that Maxine, you bring up a very good point that I would have not thought of. So thank you for that. But when we were having the conversation about kindness, we talked about the fact that kindness is subjective, that while positive, people can have different interpretations of what kindness is. White supremacist groups have said that kindness is segregation because then people can be in their own areas of the world and do their own thing, and we don't have to intermingle. They perceive segregation as kindness. So I don't like the word kindness because of the subjectivity and how people can utilize it to make it something divisive. But again, I value Maxine's point because I know procreation, I would think the other stuff, but not for me. Co-creation is really about shared governance and shared power. And to a little bit to what Andy was saying before, because I'm thinking about the classroom, I also think that we see students sometimes through the deficit model lens, and we don't really think about what they teach us and what they bring into the classroom. So whenever I'm thinking about a classroom setting or whenever I'm thinking about equity, I'm always thinking about how people in a community all can contribute positively and can all have an equal opportunity to make something new. So do I think that the word co-create is the right word? I don't know, but I can see all points. But I truly am against kindness just because of what I stated before.
Elizabeth, your hand is next, and then Nicole.
I like what Tibisai said, and I was wondering about the word that Tibisai used frequently, and it is in these paragraphs, which is like share. I think share is a little weak. I mean, the problem with all these words is that they're a little sort of like, I like co-create because it grabs your attention. It's in your face. I mean, you're like, wait, what word is that? But I like that about it. Whereas, being open and kind and sharing, these are very, cliched, I guess, you could say. They're very, elementary school students have heard them a lot already. So, I mean, maybe that's good. But anyway, I mean, it could be something like be kind, be open, share. Just an idea. But I mean, I also like co-create. I don't know, but I understand what Maxine said.
Nicole, go ahead.
I think these have all been really valid points, but we do need to look at how we want to get the message to everybody, and not if people aren't understanding even in this group what co-create means or whatnot. How do we expect people in general to all agree on what the co-create means? So I was thinking, as we are talking about being more active, what about things like instead of collaborate, which again, I still am on that, but work together, making terms specific. So people don't have the subjectiveness of working together. I think most individuals would understand what that means. So taking a look and trying to, I know we want things to sound really nice and, professional, but we also need to speak to everybody because everyone is included in what we're doing. And that's what I have to say.
Thanks, Nicole. Okay, Amy, it looks like you have a hand, and then Andy. And I'm also just watching the time. We're coming up on like 8:20 here. So I know we still have the video that we want to show, and I know we like to keep it to about 8:30. So although this discussion doesn't seem like it's quite finished, I think that, you know, you've done some really great work with these definitions, and I think we're very, very close. So go ahead, Amy, and then we'll have our last few comments.
Sure, thanks, Nidra. A couple things. I just want to acknowledge what Dee mentioned in the chat about our youngest learners, and put out there that no matter what words we decide after our lengthy wordsmithing, no matter what words we decide to use, they're always going to be misinterpreted and used differently by different people. And so we're going to have to make sure that our youngest learners, our families, our middle level learners, our high schoolers, all members of our community understand it in the same way. So it's going to have to be described not just by these definitions, but it's how we present these definitions and how we publicize them. So I think no matter what word we choose, even if we choose a word that we think is universally understood, we're still going to need to explain it and really publicize that piece of it. So kind of on that same vein, that's part of why I'm really against kindness, using that word, because I think I'm sorry, Andy, but it, you know, it conjures up this idea of positivity. However, sometimes it just means you're being nice to somebody even if you don't mean it. And I get, Maxine, the co-create issue, but there are other words that we can use, like co-build, co-design, if we're looking for something that has a similar meaning like that. But I just would point out that no matter what word we choose, we're going to have to talk about it, explain it, make it manageable and comprehensible for everybody.
Okay, thank you, I'm sorry, Amy. Nicole, and then I see Andy.
Oh, I'm sorry. No.
Old hand? Okay, go ahead, Andy.
If we change the different words, then all the definitions have to be changed. I saw Elizabeth said, be kind, be open. How are you gonna, I don't see how equity is kindness. Okay, I mean, I'm trying to figure out how we put this whole thing together, right? Now, the other thing is, just because a word has been misused by people, I mean, the whole kindness thing, I mean, that's what the slave owners said, they were being kind. I mean, it's crazy, you know, but we're defining what it is, you know, in here, that this is what it means to us. So, I mean, fairness, they can argue the same thing. Right, you know, that I'm being quite fair because, you know, this group of people doesn't have this, or this, so I'm being fair to them. You know, we got to be careful because almost any word has been misused. Okay, democracy has been misused and stuff, and that's why we define what it is. All right.
Sorry, Andy, I didn't mean to say whatever I said. I meant to go with your words, but I just forgot what they were. So I'm.
Oh, so all right. So what was your suggestion? Be fair, be open,
build together.
What?
Build together.
It's great if we could have one word. I mean, it does, you know, I'm thinking about the memorability and stuff of that, you know?
But co-build, I mean, Amy was like trying to get it with co-build or.
Yeah, I know, I went crazy. I mean, I liked co-create for a lot of reasons, you know, and you know, it's a common word that's used out in business, in technology. All right, when you're doing user interfaces and stuff, you know, the whole thing that you do is co-creation of the interface. You don't want the people, you know, who are the designers and the coders and stuff like that, just doing it by themselves. You sit there with the screen in front of somebody, you know, and doing it. But on the other hand, you know, I hear what Maxine is saying, you know, I wish we could come up with something, you know, just like that, because it makes sense. Be fair, be open. I haven't got a better word than that, which is why I like that, you know.
But if we say be fair and be open, those words be like so active, fair, open.
You're breaking up.
I'm sorry, my internet's crazy, but I said we start with, we have all.
Your audio is breaking up, Tibisay.
Sorry. Can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Better? Okay. So like be fair, 2 words, be open, 2 words, build together,
Together. Yeah.
2 words.
Yeah.
It's
like
Or-
still going together. And I think that the building together at the end is really strong
Yep.
and
Okay.
actionable.
Okay. So. Okay, so then the definition becomes inclusion means building together by using the interests and views of all of our students, ... right? And then I'll take collaborative and co-create out of the second paragraph. And it'll just be essentially what the SED definition is.
All right. Whew.
Works for me.
Wait, but why do you have to take those out? Can't you leave those in?
We
Collaborative.
could,
They're good.
we could.
No, what, can't you leave them in? No, we're having like 2 paragraphs for everything, aren't we? They all have 2 paragraphs. Wait, I'm sorry.
Right, the first one is, so you got the word on the top, which is the quick and easy thing. The second paragraph is more general and easy to understand than the third paragraph, which is essentially the SED definition, okay, is the technical, bureaucratic, inside baseball one, right? I mean, that's the whole notion of that. You guys tell me, if you want that in there or not.
I think it would be a good idea because again, just looking at the time here, we're 8:24, and I really am excited to see this video, showcasing the rally. So I'm wondering if we should kind of like put a pin in our discussion there. It sounds like we made some really good progress on that verbiage for our last definition of inclusion. And maybe if anyone has any comments that they would like or suggestions that they would like to share on that last piece of the second paragraph, they could send those along to Andy and we can keep building this definition together.
Okay, so what I will do tonight is I will type these back, fix these up to what we agreed, and I'll use the list that we got, everything, and I'll send it out to everybody. Okay, and then just send me whatever your comments are, because I really try to get everybody's comments, and everything into all this, but also make sure it's understandable at all the different levels. Okay, I'll do that tonight and get it out to you. Thank you.
Just a very quick comment. I don't understand why we've eliminated the student voices, but I'll leave it at that. I mean, they spoke and we don't seem to be listening. We're making up our own words, but I know you want to move on, so go ahead.
I think that my voice was very heard, and I really respect that people took the opinion of a high schooler and took out a word that everyone agreed on because of some silly thing that I said. And I think that I love Build Together. Like, that has an impact on me. That's something like when I hear that, I like know what it means. So I really think that my voice has been heard today, and I'm really appreciative of all the adults who are taking our voices into consideration, because these policies are going to directly affect us. So thank you.
Thank you, Maxine. I don't think at all that your input was silly. I think that it makes a difference because, again, you are one of the students who this will affect, like you said. Okay. Oh, Mirzad, do you have something that you would like to add?
I was just going to say something really quick. I'll try and keep it very brief. Just in support of whatever Maxine was just saying, I think that we should remember what we are talking about here. We are talking about the word inclusion, co-creation, and we were revolving around the topic of collaboration. So I think that just from a student voice perspective, like having the input being taken and then us all collaborating towards, a mutual word we can all agree on is very powerful, and it shows like we're all willing to do something for the team.
Thanks, my God. Okay, so finally, for our agenda tonight, we have a video that has been created to kind of show off the wonderful rally that happened last Friday at GHS. It was put on by a few student advocacy groups. I know the Black Student Union was involved. I know that the Anti-Racism Committee, Maxine, are any of the students, am I missing any other groups, or was it mainly just those 2 groups?
Yeah, as Mirzad said, it was student government and then Students and Teachers Against Racism. I think the 4 of us want to say, Nora, Mirzad, and I worked really hard on this. We just want to say Thank you so much to all the board members that came, and we were so excited to see everyone there. And for everyone that emailed me saying they couldn't make it, we really missed you there, and we can't wait to see you at the next one. And we were so thrilled to have this project be built by just students. And like, thank you to everyone for coming and for hearing their voices.
It was definitely a powerful thing to witness all the student voices being shared and to participate in the activities. So without further ado, Dr. Wiles, do you want to present the video so that we can?
I do. I have it queued up, and my internet has been terrible all night long. So after all that buildup, if it doesn't work, I'm really going to be unhappy. But let me give it a try.
Comments that you don't even realize are ignorant can linger in someone's mind and chip away at their confidence and self-esteem. They will never understand how it felt when 7-year-old me had to reassure countless numbers of people that I wasn't going to eat their pet. They will never understand how it feels when people invalidate my successes, saying, "Of course, you're Asian." Comments that you don't even realize are ignorant can linger in someone's mind and chip away at their confidence and self-esteem. In the 7th grade, I called myself a chink because the people around me referred to me as that name, and I was mystified with one of men. I, and many of my other peers, have had a bad relationship with our culture and ethnicity due to these occurrences. I still refuse to bring cultural food to school. I modify my name so that it's easier for my white teachers to remember. I'm still heavily insecure about my name, and I try to hide my religious identity if I can. The term Wasian, which means white Asian, has been used many times to exclude me from both groups. I had to learn how to speak up for myself in order to be heard over the voices of others. A microaggression is the indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against members of a marginalized group. Microaggressions are the comments, "Is your hair real? You speak English really well. And you don't act black." Microaggression is the store manager following the Hispanic woman around the store to make sure she is finding everything all right. The time my dance teacher told my friends and I to stop acting ghetto. The thing with microaggressions is that it gives a person long-term effects, and it never truly goes away. It is important to talk about these issues, no matter how uncomfortable you are.
You shouldn't try to solve these racial issues alone, and rather seek help from a colleague or another student leader who is knowledgeable.
We also want to stress that instead of punishing the person who instigated hate, you should be stern and educate so that they know that what they did has a much deeper meaning. And any way that you advocate, be yourself, and always be respectful.
The issue is that we don't have a line of white straight males here in Gilbert who are ready to advocate for those facing depression and negativity in the community.
If you see someone being invalidated, there is no larger sign of respect than wanting someone to be respected. When you see someone from a certain culture, I ask you to refrain from making any judgments about it. Everyone at this rally and everyone at our school can and will empower our community to advocate for issues. And that movement starts now.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Dr. Wiles. And so that will be like launched, you said, tomorrow on the website and other places?
It will be on all of our social media channels. So our website, Facebook, Twitter. I just think our communications office did a phenomenal job putting that together and really capturing the words and the sound and the feel of that event on that Friday. So hats off to everyone who put that together and was able to attend. It was really, really special.
A lot of positive comments in the chat. All right, so if no one has any more pressing questions or comments or concerns, then I think we can go ahead and call it a night. We did a lot of really awesome work here, and as always, it was a really great discussion. So, all right, I think we're good. Have a good evening, everyone.